Hello, welcome to day 104 of 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tomlins Nyback, and it is a pleasure to be with you once again. Oh, we're still going through our series on the signers of the Declaration of Independence. I'm finding out great things, little tidbits, this cross section of white male authority, from superstars to common folks that were probably just available to represent their colonies. I'm sure there was politics, friendships, alliances, uh, galore, a common purpose to release, uh, to sever connections with England. Before we get too much into that, we want to talk. We're here because we're talking about Black issues, Black problems in America, institutional marginalization, where we're talking about systemic um, attitudes and um, doctrines that seem to have Black folks frozen. You know, you can't tell by looking at sports or even politics. You can't tell by looking at game show hosts, talk show hosts. You think of Black folks, entertainment, all the entertainment. You think Black folks are doing well and have come, right? Rather far. Not so. Not so. Still, the majority of the minority bears the majority of the dysfunction of a nation. It's proved by incarceration or general economic um, representation in such a wealthy space. And now from our southern borders, we've got tens of thousands of, of Hispanic community members just pouring over the border. You know, everybody's got a right. I don't see boatloads of Africans coming. Though we've taken refugees of that nature, but the numbers and how these numbers are continue to squeeze out and strangle the Black Americans' space in America. I was just listening to Hillary Clinton, just a recorded interview at some kind of summit. And there are all these summits. I applied for a summit. I'm not surprised I didn't get any response back because I'm just too far deep into this project. I understand what Dr. Anderson is trying to communicate, and he already faces a lack of some of that mainstream support that would get this off the ground, which is good because uh, this project, any thing associated with this project needs to be exclusive, needs to be restrictive, because history has shown once we let our guard down and try to be inclusive and listen, you got to understand the Black identity, the Black history, um, the abuse, neglect, marginalization. You know, uh, you need to understand our apparent. See, the Black identity is apparent in the nation. Every other um, identity, fighting for diversification, inclusion, and all the kumbayas around the campfire and stuff aren't as apparent, you know, even languages, you know, and those communities, especially language, Asian, Hispanic, Arab, those communities have their own level of exclusivity, of not interacting. Blacks need to do the same thing and be that way. And I say that because I was watching Hillary Clinton on CNN just now, and she talks about she's at this inclusion diversity summit and all that. good feelings and all that. But you know, this work just has made me sensitive to how evasive America is about the slave issue. It's very open about the Jewish Holocaust. Um, Interesting, it doesn't say anything very rarely about the Native Americans. Um, I want to, and let me say quickly, you know, it's interesting that when Native American uh, issues come up in theater, it's always about something has gone wrong with the Native American, their land or their culture, and it's not a very empowering portrayal of the Native Americans. That's just a side note. That's something I noticed the other day. But I'm noticing things. You know, they skip around what America was about for slavery. We talk all about how we went, you know, we interceded for the Jews under Hitler's regime and all that. And of course, we went to Middle East for oil. You know, that was a very selfish thing. A lot of lies put out. You know, we talk about um, being such a superpower and big economy and all this. I think that's good for the masses, but that's not what I'm seeing. I'm still a blue collar guy, and I work for a logistics company. We are not uh, overwhelmed with moving, transporting American products. We are being flooded with stuff from Asia, China mostly. You know, so but all these things, and they talk about uh, you know, doing so much good for everybody but their own citizens. And this is systemic. This is, you know, don't be in a hurricane. Don't be in Puerto Rico, right? Puerto Rico still ain't got its hurricane relief. You know, the president handed out towels. Ah, you know, we put on a good show in the world, but you know, our citizens, there's a disconnect of holding people accountable for what we say we're about internally. The world doesn't get that at all, not at all. I'm glad I'm doing this. I'm glad you know, I've been asleep for decades. There's been I've been scabbed over, and my eyes, scales, you know, a lot in a way like Paul, you know, when he received his sight after being blinded by Jesus. Something says something like scales fell from his eyes, and then he was unstoppable after that. And so, you know, I'm going to have a talk with a friend, one of my gay friends, gay white friend. This guy is a very good friend. I love him a lot dearly, you know. So we're going to talk about these videos and these issues, and it's okay, you know. We may disagree, agree to disagree, and stuff like that. We've got a good relationship. And the thing is, like, you know, now that this, at first it was a lot of it was zeal. I was like, what? Say what? You know, when you first get information, then over the past 100 days, it's kind of settled in, and now I can think logically about the information that I'm assimilating, you know, and now it's further ingrained, and I'm understanding why I must maintain my level of enthusiasm and consistency about the subject. You know, it's changed my personal world. You know, and I'm hoping you come along in whatever marginalization you face in America. Always listen. I realized this as I've come through this project. Always remember the bar is white male power in the world. It's always, you can follow the money, relationships, policies, all that. We want our recognition, but the validation is when we uh, are respected or can um, feel as though we are exercising the same rights, powers, um, decisions as white male entitlement and power. That's what that's what it's boiled down to for me. Please feel free to disagree, do your own research. So that's a little bit, just, I probably watched too much CNN already. So here we go. I'm Tomlin's Nyback. This is day 104, 365 days towards racial change. And so we talked a little bit about that. Two thoughts have emerged from this project. First thought has two parts. First part is the slave mind, that especially those black people in America who are descended from slaves specifically, is that slave mind being perpetuated from generation to generation. And on the flip side of the same coin is the white mind of entitlement, privilege, expectation of favor being passed on from generation to generation in the white community, and other communities in between, I'm sure, have their traditions, totems, and all that kind of thing that just kind of intuitively, maybe environmentally, get passed on from generation to generation. Second thought is about economics, financial literacy. Um, I could probably go on and on about how my mind has changed. The mind of us changed first, Civil rights, social integration had its day. It was not as much of a victory as black people hoped, but at least we've done that experiment, put it aside, and now get some tangible things. Now, the problem with just getting tangible assets and things is if we're not educated, it's going to hurt us more than help us. I know with when my father passed, he had put away money, insurance money, and things like that. He was a great father on that point, but I was not educated. If you're into the Bible at all, you look at the book of Ecclesiastes or Proverbs, it talks about uh, the son who is a fool, and not just pejoratively, but ignorant, unknowing, illiterate on these things. You don't just build up kingdoms, put away resources and stuff, and give it to a person uneducated. So, if one of America's excuses was based on that philosophy, I could understand that. But I still think we need some tangible things going on. A man named Dr. Claude Anderson is my mentor. He doesn't know it. I hope I can meet him someday and just hear some of his education directly from his lips, face to face. I read 3 of his works, A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask, Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice, and his national plan to empower Black America, Powernomics. You can find Dr. Anderson at powernomics.com. Also, the Heritage Institute in Washington, D.C. I think it's a physical space now. He's not a hard guy to find. He's all over YouTube. And talks much better about this stuff than I do. And occasionally, especially after this series, we're going to take a fictional look. We're going to check in on old Tom, Uncle Tom's Cabin, Harriet Beecher Stowe's phenomenal fictional work of slave life in America, but I think it's very relevant. We get blackface from this work, stereotypes about relations between blacks and whites in America. So it's very important to me to look at that. That her book uncovers some interesting tidbits about slave punishment, uh, the lack of rights for a slave, and all that. So we look at that occasionally. Behind me, you'll see hashtag us twos, black females getting together, supporting one another in response to the hashtag Me Too movement, where it seems to be an overwhelming white female thing. What's going on there? I'm not going to wade into that argument, but apparently some needs were not being met, seem to be along a color line, and here comes hashtag us too. You find it's the information age. I could make out 100 #2 support groups all over the place, but everybody's got their flavor. Go to Black Enough, BLAGGENUF. More supports, kind of Black Facebook. It's the information age. You can find your flavor. If you found me here, if you found Mr. Tomlin's Nyback of 365 Days Towards Racial Change, you can find anything that you're looking for, because I know I'm not high on Google's algorithm of search on YouTube. You really got to be specific about typing in the titles of finding this work. I'm way back in the archives. Thank you, Google and YouTube, all you guys, Silicon Valley and stuff. All right, I've had a little bit of rant introduction. Now I kind of took up a lot of time because we're going to look at two brothers here. It's interesting. I'm going alphabetically, and we get some interesting pairs as we come down this list. And today, we're in the L's. Find two brothers here involved in the Declaration of Independence. They're separated by 2 years. We're going to talk with the oldest one first, and it's because his first name came earlier in the alphabet than his little brother. I'm sorry, I got that backwards. We'll talk to the youngest first, and because his first name came in the alphabet right before his oldest brother. Here we go. That's better. I remember my brief notes, and I got that tangled up a little bit. So it's the Lee brothers, both out of Virginia. Francis Lightfoot Lee he was born in 1734 and 1797. Died of a lung condition called pleurisy, if I'm saying that right, inflammation. Your organs are nicely situated inside you, hopefully, healthily. But there's membranes and films around your organs, and the pleurisy was kind of a problem with the membranes around his lungs. So that was a problem. I'm from the East Coast. The Northeast, well, the East Coast is just kind of wet, and so I have respiratory problems out there. I live in a dry area now, and it's done wonders for my health. That's I don't hear much now. Maybe I don't get out as much, but your cancer patients, go out, go west, Arizona, go someplace dry, and might not stave off the disease or issue completely, but it's a definite help not to be so wet in the chest area. So I can dig where Francis Lightfoot Lee is coming from. Nothing notable about these guys. Again, I'm referencing Wikipedia. Nothing big and notable like Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Hancock, anything like that. I mean, not everybody was a superstar, even as signing the Declaration of Independence. That I just think these are common guys, common folk, representatives of their colonies or states. Boy, if they could just see like what it meant, what it means today. Skyscraper, war, medicine, you know. Uh, it's I'm impressed. I can talk down slavery and oppression, marginalization, but there's good there as well. You know, from, if the rhetoric from the media is correct, then America is really one of the best places to live. It's no mystery why so many people from Central America and Mexico are trying to get in. Those lands are not as free. And I don't need the media to tell me that. It's like these people are running from a burning house. What's wrong with the house that they're leaving? So America's got a lot of great points. It's not all bad. Oh, maybe a plantation owner. I forget which website I was looking at that kind of lists what the trades of these guys were. Oh, and they were educated. Like, it wasn't just like farm boys that came up like we get with maybe the idea of Abraham Lincoln. With his story, there's a lot of manual labor and stuff associated with Abraham Lincoln. But these good old boys, they were educated plantation owners, business owners, and whatnot. They were not in place and in these positions by accident. Okay, no particular religion cited, no associated with slaves. Virginia being a slave state. Anybody growing up there, it's normative. It's like me growing up seeing dogs in fences or chained, or seeing just some common activity. It's no the slaves. You maybe don't feel some moral obligation or spiritual obligation to an institution that you grow up with. It's normative. It's a normal thing. So there's, asking some of these guys I've noticed, trying to get something out of them about the relationship with religion and slavery. It's for them, it wouldn't be a proper question to be asking. You know what I mean? So with no religion slated, not a whole lot on Wikipedia, nothing about slavery. I think it's because it was so normal. You just suppose that them being in a slave state, you don't have white guys back then in the deep South being a hardcore champion of abolition, right? You might as well ask me from a country where I ride in vehicles distances, and I shorten my time from getting place to place, going to a place on this planet where people walk, and being an advocate for walking. No, I grew up with vehicles. So I think it's the same thing with the people of Virginia, Georgia, probably parts of Kentucky, the Carolinas, So that's Francis Lightfoot Lee. And he signed, a lot of these guys probably signed the Declaration. There's a pretty good, they have a good political resume. But I would say ultimately, it's something beyond politics has to motivate them to risk imprisonment, being caught for treason and things like that. And it's economics. It's my wallet, you know. Think what you want, say what you want. You start encroaching on my finances, you and I, then we're going to have issues, and I might have to squarely approach you about that. So that's Francis Lightfoot Lee. Lightfoot Lee. His brother, Richard Henry Lee, born 2 years earlier, he's the older brother. He was also a Virginia senator. Francis was they each were senators and things like that. And then, as I go through this project, I'm realizing, there's a sense in my life where my will gets hijacked, and so these guys, these brothers, all these representatives go, doing what they think is right. But, how many little people, men and women, have gotten squashed because these guys meet in this place and make up law for the whole land. It's the same thing, the response to England in a lot of ways. Go into that later. Richard Henry Lee, senator, born 1732, died 1794. Now, the whole Lee family was just involved with politics, military, legislatures, organizations, educated in England and things like that. So I talked about the literacy of these individuals. I found him listed as merchant, and he didn't have any religion or anything associated with his life. Virginia, slavery's normative. Two brothers, they're going to back each other. You have some family loyalty there. Having found him listed as a merchant, he's very close and loyal to preservation of he wants to preserve his resources, whatever he probably had. He probably had slaves, and he didn't want England, over there on the other side of the ocean telling him what to do and coming at him or against him, encroaching on his hard work and his labor. I wouldn't want it either. So I'm no different than that. So that's we ran into two brothers on the same day, going alphabetically. It's interesting coincidence there. I want you to please stick around, hang out with us here at 365 Days Towards Racial Change. Remember that we're not advocating hate or talking bad. We're talking about realities, what's real, and you can't be part of a summit. You can't diversify what you don't understand, what you don't comprehend. And these summits and all these feel-good things, immigrants pouring over the border. Oh boy, you can really get discouraged if you look at it. Now, as far as the black issue, if we would just focus, hold our position, be clear, and then let people know we're going to be exclusive. We have a right to our expression and our exclusivity, just as these other groups do. All these other groups aren't trying to weaken their message about who they are, their identity. But black folks, we love to accommodate. Oh boy, got a long way to go. I'm Tomlin's Nyback. That's 365 Days Towards Racial Change, day 104 out of the way. Hope to see you tomorrow.